welcome back. This is the Allegheny Northern in N scale, and today we are going to do a review of the ScaleTrains SD40-2, the long-awaited model for folks like me who are SD40-2 fans. Absolutely love the locomotive, buy it every time somebody releases one, and you have probably, no doubt, also been interested in it, and you've looked at everybody else's reviews so far. You've heard the good, you've heard the bad, you've heard the ugly, and now you want to know, should you buy it? So now that you've heard the rest, stay with the best. We're going to give you the most in-depth coverage and comparison of the ScaleTrains SD40-2, what's good, what's bad, and try to address some of the hype that you have heard and see if we can put the myths to bed. Okay, first I purchased two of the locomotives, and I've watched 3 or 4 people who have done a review on the locomotive. And usually I don't watch other people's reviews before I do my own, but I was so excited about these ones that I had to see, what they look like, because I had them on the way. And so I saw some reviews, and it sort of got me a little upset. First of all, I'm not doing an unboxing. You guys know what the box looks like. You've taken things out of boxes before, so I'm not showing you the box. Second of all, I'm not showing you the locomotive right out of the box. Right now, I am in the middle of a break-in period, so I've got my Southern and I've got my NS unit running the layout. They have been running the layout now for about half an hour, so we're not quite ready yet to show you what it can do. But it's Sunday when I'm filming this, and Sunday is family dinner day, so I'm actually spending most of my time upstairs cooking, and I am not actually paying attention to these things as they run around the layout. So, yeah, that's usually a good sign. If I can walk away and they're still doing what they do, that's usually a pretty good indication that I don't have too many issues. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the camera off. I got sauce to stir, and I will be back here to give you the full review. Okay, so we will get into the details and the sounds and the functions and all that here in a minute. But what I want to address is the operation, because you're buying a new locomotive, and that locomotive should operate well, especially if you're paying about $250, which is what these are retailing for, if you go with the DCC and sound versions. If you get it without the DCC and sound, then you're heading in the neighborhood of $150. So for the extra $100, you get all of the functionality. For the specifics, you are getting an ESU Loc Sound, the latest version, decoder in here, and sound files. So that's where you're starting off with on the model, and that's pretty much what ScaleTrains has been using. So one of the major complaints that I saw from folks was that the locomotives were jerky when they were starting, and my locomotive actually was the reverse of everybody else's. So everybody else, they had jerky motion at slow speed. Mine crawled at slow speed perfectly, but was jerky at higher speeds. So go figure. I got the oddball. But now that was coming out of the box. So we are now 2 hours in to the break-in period, and for me to break in a locomotive, I usually like to go about 4 hours. I know that in the olden days, so to speak, it was you would run it half hour forward, half hour backwards. That gets you there, but for me, I really like to test the locomotive, and I like to let it run over the layout. So one of the other complaints that I saw, or comments that folks made, was that these locomotives ride low, and they do. So when I saw that, last night I was getting ready to call it a night, and I wanted to go down and mess with the locomotives because they had come late in the day, hadn't had a chance to put them on the layout, and I was like, oh man, I know I got some low clearance issues, this could be a problem. And I had 2 issues. One, which you guys probably already guessed, was where the big boy stalled out, that bump in the track. I spent probably 2 minutes sanding out the bumps, and the locomotive went right over it. Both the Norfolk Southern and the Southern unit. So I'm not going to blame the locomotive on that. I knew that was a problem, and that's where I was afraid it was going to get stuck. And sure enough, that's exactly where it got stuck. So sanded out the rail joints. It runs smoother. I actually want to retest the big boy to see if I can get that 16 car train up there. So I might do that later just to play around. But that was a problem with the layout. It's a real sharp curve. That's a stupid grade over there. This summer, when I'm back outside and can make bench work, I am going to look at changing that whole new layout section in the back. So stay tuned for that. But in any event, that grade right now is a menace. It's been a menace since I put it in. Math is hard sometimes, and I don't know what I did, but I didn't math correctly. So we'll get that fixed. Back to the locomotive. The other issue it had was where I figured it was going to have one is in the snow area. The swing of the fuel tank over one of the snow banks was getting it kind of hung up. So I just sanded that back a little bit, and it took right off, and I have not had an issue since. The locomotive has been running by itself for 2 hours, other than me switching the direction every half hour from forward to backward and then back again. I didn't really have any interventions with the locomotive. Twice I got a short and found out that it was because the front wheel of the locomotive had come off the track. Once was it did it on its own, and once was I didn't reset it properly. And that was the only 2 times that it did it, other than the time that I bumped it. But we're not gonna talk about that. So there's so much detail on the trucks, and they're so low profile that I use the Cato road re-railer section that you'll see here in a minute, because I couldn't see the wheels, so I wasn't sure if it was on the track or not. So part of that was on me for the second time. But in general, the locomotive was ran unattended for almost 2 hours and did not have an issue other than those couple that I mentioned. So okay, so that is the performance of the layout. So if you are having issues with your locomotive getting hung up, hate to break it to you, it's not your locomotive, it is your Trackwork. Because if it can run over my Trackwork, which I know is not perfect, then it's not the locomotive, it's you. So take a look at your Trackwork. Going through turnouts, through the crossovers, no issues. I will show you those to do that. ScaleTrains uses those proto wheels on their locomotives, and I hate them because they find every little bump and imperfection in the track, especially on their cars, which are obviously lighter, but did not have any issues getting this thing through a turnout, over a turnout, through the crossovers, anything like that. So, okay, let's talk about the jerky motion of the motor, because that's a problem. And so when this thing started out, I just had it at, I'm going to say about 10% throttle, and she just kind of slid along the track. It looked good. To break her in, I moved her up to about 40% throttle for the first hour, and then 50% throttle for the second hour. No magic to that, just breaking it in. And that's when I started noticing that the locomotive was kind of jerking. It was almost like the gears were slipping or something. No noise. And in fact, I wasn't getting a grinding motion, noise or anything like that. It just, you could see it in the locomotive that was kind of skipping along. A lot of times I will attribute that to dirty rail, but I never lost sound. In the 2 hours that this thing ran around, it never lost sound, except when it derailed. It ran beautifully. It sounded beautiful. Didn't have any issues with the sound. So it's definitely in the motor and the gearing. And for those of you who are simple model railroaders and not mechanically inclined, you probably don't know this, but machines of all type have a break-in period. I don't care whether it's your brand new car, whether it's a new rooftop unit on a building. It doesn't matter what the machine is, even your lawnmower, because when it's put together at the factory, it's factory lubricated. Everything is factory tight. And even if they test it, the parts aren't really broken in, so the lubrication isn't all on it. The motors haven't had their chance to fully cycle. It's just not broken in. It's factory new. So if you are watching a video and the user is not telling you that they broke the locomotive in first, you got to be skeptical of whether or not that's a good review, because you're not seeing the motor performing the way the motor's intended to. You're seeing it factory new out of the box. Everything's tight. Everything's not greased. Don't forget, none of our models are made here in the U.S. They are made overseas. They sit in shipping containers. Grease gets old. It needs to run before you can do a review of the motor. So that's a key thing. If they didn't tell you they broke in the motor first, then ask that question in the comment section. Did you break in this motor before you try to do a review on it? Because if not, everything that comes after that review, take it with a grain of salt until you find out. So I will tell you that when I am doing a video, a review of the model, it's broken in. So I've run it for at least 2 hours forwards and backwards. I have tested all the sounds. I have run it through crossings. I've run it over the layout because I want to trip it up. I want to see where it's going to have issues. That way I can report it to you. The manufacturers are not paying me. I'm buying everything that's getting reviewed here. So if I'm not happy with it, chances are you're not going to be happy with it. And then once again, that's limited to the models that I'm actually in possession of. So my model may run perfectly and your model may not, because of a quality control issue. So I know that when I was doing my review of the SD40-2s on the Broadway Limited, and I loved them right out of the box. This is kind of where I learned my lesson. The more I ran them, the more I hated them. And then you guys all said, "Hey, I didn't have any issues with mine at all." Well, okay, maybe I got the 2 bad units in the box. I don't know. I just know that they sucked, and made me shy away from Broadway Limited. And a lot of you did not have issues with it. So when they made their most recent release of SD40-2s, I said, no thank you, I'm going to wait for the ScaleTrains version, because I already had the Broadway Limited, and I knew I didn't like it. So why would I waste money on another set of Broadway Limited until till it was out and people had reviewed it and said, yeah, hey, this is a good model. So maybe I'll go back at some point and try them again. But, anyway, we digress here. So, okay, so out of the box, slow speed, fine. Half throttle, not fine. What the heck, ScaleTrains? I don't know, but I didn't break it in. So, let me show you what it looks like now that it's broken in and how it runs. Okay, so I do apologize for some of the background noise in this video. I already told you that I'm cooking Sunday dinner upstairs and doing laundry downstairs, and that's probably what you're going to hear. So Sunday is a cook, clean, and sew day. So that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm my best impression of a good housewife, I guess. So I'm sure that comment will get me canceled. But in any event, let's go ahead and do some performance review. So the appliances you hear in the background we can ignore because we're not doing sound just yet. So we're going to put her in forward and going to ramp her up here to, I'm just at about 6% of my throttle. And there she goes. Okay, you kind of see that there's a little bit of hesitation there, right? I mean, it's barely perceptible, but it's there. And that can be anything from the motor itself to the track to a bunch of things. But let's just say that it's definitely present. So I don't want to gloss over that because this would be a switching type unit, and slow speeds is probably where you're running it. So let's go ahead and ramp it up a little bit. Okay, I'm at about 17% throttle. And the forward direction. see that we've smoothed out a little bit. I'm going to stop it right there, and I'm going to slap her into reverse. Okay, back to 7% throttle. And mind you, I'm about halfway through the break-in period that I would typically give this locomotive before shooting a video. And I can tell you that it was pretty jerky when I first started. And then it got better as I was running it, which is kind of what I told you was going to happen. Alright, so I add another 10% to the throttle here. I'm about 17%. And we're going to go ahead and run it back to where we started. So I want to keep my eye on it so you can see what she's doing. And I'm trying to stay far enough back that you can kind of get some frame of reference so that if it's jerking around, you'll see that. But you can see that in general, it's pretty smooth, even at 17%. And I don't know how slow you guys are running your locomotives, but you know for me that's a good local speed for hauling a short little local or some yard works. That's probably where it's going to max out most of its career. All right, I'm going to put the brake on, and I'm going to ramp the throttle up to about let's do about 40% or so. And I'm going to slap it into forward. All right, and there we are at 40%. Okay, I'm going to try not to get you guys sick as I walk around with this thing, but I want to walk it around the layout with you, at least for a bit, so you can see it running, so that you're getting an idea. You're seeing what I'm seeing. Now I got to be honest with you, when I first came out of the box and it wasn't really skipping around or anything, I went, oh, okay, I don't have a problem. And then when it started, I went, ah, crap, maybe there is an issue with these. And then as I broke it in, following my own rules, don't show a locomotive until you've broken it in and tested it. I calmed down a little bit because the locomotive calmed down a bit. So rather than trying to duck under the bridge here, I'm going to pick this thing up on the other side. Okay, I did want to show you this thing going over the bump that I have, because as for those of you who are Inspector Clouseau fans, you see the field effect with the hump. So right there was the hump, and there it is going right over it. So okay, so now once again it's going to disappear behind the wall. So I'm going to stop the video and pick it up on the other side. Okay, so here I am on the other side of the wall and catching the NS unit as it comes out of the tunnel. And I know we're looking for this thing to jerk and bounce around, and it keeps disappearing behind scenery things. So, it's work with me here. I'm trying. But as you can see, it's not performing any better or any worse than pretty much any other locomotive. You know, I can see where it's, you know, it's rubbing a little close in some areas, and that's track work. That's not locomotive. So I don't want to get, pardon the expression, but I don't want to get hung up on my track work, because that's not really the test here. I know I've got some issues in some areas, and that's why I've spent most of the last 2-3 weeks kind of ironing out those issues, changing scenery, filing some joints, just, you know, with the expansion and contraction down here in the basement. Even though it's temperature controlled, we do get some pretty wild temperature swings, and you know, it's one of those maintenance things that you just gotta do. So so do I wish that this motion was a little bit smoother than it was out of the box? Well, yeah, it's always nice to have it where you don't have to do anything right out of the box. But you gotta break it in. So break it in, and you know, if it still is having an issue after, you know, 4 or 6 hours of continuous running, then yeah, then you need to talk to ScaleTrains, I think, because you might have a problem with your locomotive. But you know, there it is at what I would consider, you know, open road speed, and you know, it's doing what I expect it to do. So you know, I'm not sure. I think a lot of the other folks who were reviewing this and giving it a bad driving review just didn't break it in. You know, or they've got track joints that are, you know, bad, and the fuel tank is getting hung up. That's the only thing I can think of. But you know, or they just happen to grab a bad batch. I honestly don't know, but this locomotive anyway is, sorry, that's the big boy in the background dumping the steam. So he'll shut up in a second. But you know, I'm just not. I'm not having the issues that other folks were having. Out of the box, yes. Out of the box, it was definitely a jerky start. But some other people have talked about their other locomotives doing that as well, and I think, you know, get them up and running before you start, you know, judging it. So, okay, let's run it in reverse just to show you it goes in reverse. Okay, I promise you it is coming. It's coming back here. One other thing I should note is that, and we're still at 40% throttle. So just so you have a frame of reference, I just slammed on the brake, threw the reverser in reverse, and then set it back. And that little bit of hesitation you saw there was it on the Trackwork. That wasn't the engine. That was actually there's a low spot in the track there, and it bottoms out. Okay, so rather than do this exact same process with the Southern unit, let me tell you that the Southern unit out of the box did run a little bit smoother. At least I perceived that it was running a little bit smoother. I had them on the same track, running together, and they never caught up to each other, and they stayed about the same distance apart. So as far as reliability and speed and everything, as far as the motor goes, it seems to be pretty good, because they never caught up to each other, they never pushed each other, they never got any closer. It looked like they pretty much ran the layout together at the same speed, staying roughly the same distance apart. So, you know, that's actually pretty good. I don't know that I have too many models that do that, even among ScaleTrains. So I was kind of impressed by that. Usually one catches up to the other at some point, but they're pretty evenly matched, and which is great, because now you don't have to speed match them, right? I hate speed matching, and these ones are ready to run together, which is how they're gonna run. The Southern is set up for long hood forward. The NS is set up for short hood forward. So they've got a prototypical setup already, which is cool. I always like that. And there are the SD40-2 is that timeless locomotive, right? Like, it's been around forever. And there are so many variations, so many remakes, so many differences between all of the different roads and everything. So trying to find the specific information for this, each particular locomotive was actually kind of difficult, because depending on, what build you found it in, there were some slight differences. So I'm going to default and say that Norfolk Southern and the Southern unit, the ScaleTrains, got them prototypically correct. There are some differences in them. It's going to take me a little bit of time to actually do the full research and find out, how close they were. But, it appears that they spent the time on the detail, and so that's cool. I like that. Okay, so let's take the locomotive and let's go look at the actual detail. Okay, so I usually don't flip the locomotive over, but I saw somebody really upset that I'm going to try to get it in profile here, that they look like they cut the bottom of the fuel tender down to make way for the track to slide underneath it. And that's obviously not what they did here. If you go and you look at this locomotive, and it took me forever on railpictures.net to find what this fuel tank looked like on the original locomotives, but they actually had this extra rounded piece on the end, and then it tucked up underneath. I found it on an NS unit, actually, and like I said, not too many people photograph the fuel tank, but that doesn't appear to be a ridge that the ScaleTrains folks cut in there to make the locomotive go, as was suggested in the review. It's the actual shape of the fuel tank. So do your research before you look at that. So I did find some photographs where the fuel tanks were shaped like that on the end. And also, I mean, that wouldn't even make sense that they would do that for clearance, because as you go over a corner, those fuel tank edges would rub on the rail, right? So like that wouldn't even make sense. So I don't know exactly. I think that was an anger post, because their track work wasn't very good. But in any event, yeah, that's not what that's for. That is actually the shape of the fuel tank. I can't tell if that's an original or a modified fuel tank based on the the locomotive, but that is not there for track clearance. In fact, it doesn't even perfectly line up with the wheels. And like I said, it would be in motion over a curve or something. That little rounded end is over the rail and would not provide clearance anyway. So yeah, just be careful with the information out there. Not everything you see on the internet is true. So, okay, let's go in and do an in-depth look at the two locomotives, and then I want to compare it to some other locomotives here, and so you can get a full taste of what you're getting with the ScaleTrains. Okay, so we are starting with the Southern unit, and I think the first thing that everyone pointed out, and I agree, is what the heck is the giant metal copper, contact point doing visible? That's a little lame. You can color it in with some metal, appropriate paint. Be careful where you get it. You don't want to ruin the contact, but that's, it stands out. Like, no denying it. I mean, the further back you get, it's not like it gets better. It's definitely there. So, what is that? I don't know. But let's look at the truck detail itself. And I turned off some of the lights so we're not so backlit. But once again, you've got everything from the sander hoses to all of the brake cylinder hoses, and it's another great set of trucks from ScaleTrains. So nice work on those. And when you see the other models, you're going to see that there's varying degree of truck detail available. And so as we come down here, you can see that there is all of the door details. You've got a little view window there on the side. That, I guess that's in, that's where where you start up the prime mover. The painting is all nice and crisp. I don't know if I'm going to be able to focus in on on the lettering, and it's legible to the eye if your eye is good. It's legible under magnification, but this camera's just not going to get it. And then, of course, we've got our pilot detail. You know, pretty awesome. You got all your MU hoses, cut levers, separately applied grabs, horns. Let's go ahead up here, take a look at the fan detail. ScaleTrains does a fantastic job with the fan details. You can see through it. There is this like conduit running along the top. I don't know what that is. So if somebody knows, I'm sure you could throw that in the comments below. Let me know what that is, because the Broadway Limited version doesn't have it, and so I don't know what it does. But once again, there's so many versions of the SD40-2s, depending on what year your SD40-2 is from. You know, there's been parts and pieces added to it that you know, make it different. So no ditch lights on the Southern version. So older version, you know, before ditch lights, I guess, were a thing. So just keep that in mind. It's not wrong. It's just aging. So let's take a look here. Here's the Broadway Limited one. You know, truck detail's not bad. You can still see the copper in there, not as bad. But you know, they got some of the separately applied details on the truck. Don't have the sanders. You know, that's in fact, I think the ScaleTrains is the only one that's actually doing that now. Up here on the fan detail, you know, not bad. So this is probably the closest match to ScaleTrains, I think, you know, as far as detail. They on this version, they do have the they don't have the snow plows on it. They have the flat panel version, and there are ditch lights on the back side of the locomotive, which didn't make any sense to me because you know, it was set up for running long hood forward, but they put the ditch lights on the back. Once again, that's probably how the real model was, but you know, it's just there's that lettering that you can't see. Yeah, it's same here. It does look a little bit more legible in real life on the ScaleTrains version. Here's the Intermountain version. Truck detail is more basic, and the scenery detail does not come with it. You've got to add that yourself. And the brass contacts are not behind the wheels. You can see it's more traditional. You can see the little bent bar there. This is no ditch lights on this model, which is an error because they would have had it. So this is, you know, that's a strike there. You got some separately applied details. You've got some molded on details. So, you know, that's out of all of the locomotives, that's probably the least detailed. Fan details up above, nothing exciting. You can't see the fan underneath it. You do have a see-through grill, but there's nothing to see through to. So this is, you know, flying by in a consist, not bad, but it's going to look a little funky next to the ScaleTrains or even the Broadway Limited version. And then Kato. I'm not going to pick on Kato. This is an excellent running locomotive. It's not nearly as expensive as the other three that we've looked at so far. And you get a different price point. So the trucks are a little bit more basic. And you will notice that all of the trucks on all of these locomotives are different, right? They've all got different versions. So, I mean, that's just, you know, that's cool. But not a lot of warning labels, not a lot of decals, you know, they're on this model. It's just, it's a little more basic. You do have the hoses on the back, but all of the details are molded in, and, you know, the fans are just, they're just there. There's no fan detail inside. It's an excellent pooling model. It runs very, very well. No ditch lights. You know, it's an older model, no sound. This is one that I converted. So that is the most basic of the SD40-2s that I own. You know, but once again, if it's in a consist and it's not the main focus, it's a great pulling locomotive. It runs super smooth, super quiet. So I wouldn't trade it for, you know, for anything. But it's not well detailed. The railings are thick and bulky. The missing a lot of decals, missing a lot of added details that the other models have. You can add that. You know, if you want them, you can add them. So it's, you know, it's not like this is, you know, forever going to be this shunned locomotive or anything. I just haven't gotten to detailing this locomotive up, and someday I will. And when I get the parts and pieces, you know, I'll make it look to the same quality as the other ones. But starting off out of the gate, out of the box, none of these locomotives have had any work done to them, you know. So that's what you're gonna get. So obviously, you know, this is more of like $100 locomotive. Back when I bought it, I think this was 110, maybe 120. This was 250, and now this one's 250. So you know, that's where we are in the detail. So let me take that little guy, ScaleTrains version, put it next to that little guy, so we can do a basically model to model comparison. Okay, so here we are at a distance, and because everything's blacked out because of the light, it doesn't look too different. But if we take the two noses and put them together, you know, there's a difference there. I mean, just look at the trucks. If you can get past looking at that copper bar behind there, which, yeah, it's just kind of lame. You know, you're getting. Just look at the pilot details. You know, there's a difference. You know, look at the end truck details. There's a difference. You know, and once again, you're looking at two different models, that two different errors. I think there's going to be some slight differences, but just, you know, take a look at it, see it, you know, understand what you got going on there. So I wanted you to see all these locomotives kind of side by side because, you know, varying degrees, varying price points, you do get different things. You know, cool locomotives. I mean, it's not like they're not cool locomotives. It's just they're, you know, you get different things at different price points. Okay, so now that we're on to the more glamorous side of the model, let's talk about the features that you're getting. I've got this. I'm going to set this in reverse here. Well, let's do this. Let's turn the headlights on, and let's turn the ditch lights on, and let's start the actual locomotive. Okay, that was the startup sequence. It's that fast. Some of the other models that I have from ScaleTrains have a ridiculously long, even some of the Atlas have a ridiculously long startup. Apparently the SD40-2s were ready to go off and start working right away. So we are up and running. I'm going to slap this into reverse. And here's the belt. And the horn. All right, so let's throttle up here a bit. Okay, there's our braking sound, and I want to go ahead and put it forward. And mainly I wanted you to see that there were alternating ditch lights with the horn front and back. Okay, this locomotive is pretty quiet. The NS unit is. Let me bring out the Southern and show you that one. Okay, once again, let's turn the headlights on. No ditch lights. Function 6 is on, but we don't got them because Model ain't got them. That horn is a bit loud in comparison to the NS unit, but it sounds cool, doesn't it? And just like all current V5 ESU loc sound decoders, this has the full throttle function. It's got drive hold for simulating big loads, heavy loads on a hill, that sort of thing. So it's cool. It's one of those awesome features you get with a sound locomotive. And from an aesthetics perspective, these locomotives are beautiful. They are. They have every bit of detail that the Broadway Limited does and more. And I think they sit a little bit low, but prototypically the fuel tanks were also low. So I don't know that that's necessarily wrong. It might be an inconvenience for Trackwork, but that's sort of where we're at. So the last thing I want to show you is just it running through some turnouts so that you can see how it performs there. Okay, I'm just at about 20% throttle here, coming into the double crossover. And let me reverse that. Okay, maybe you're still not satisfied and you want to see it do a regular number 6. Let's do a regular number 6. And I didn't lose it. Just coming around. And there she is rolling through a number 6. All right, now I know what you really want to see. You want to see it do a number 4 because everybody hates the Kato number 4s. All right, let's do a number 4. Okay, I'm not going to do one number 4. I'm going to do 2 number 4s. We're taking the easy road here. We're going to go through it backwards. So, I mean, if you got an issue going through it backwards, then man, take a look at your track work. But I know the track work in the mine is bad because I'm working on it now. But backwards, no problem. And then this comes out of a pretty sharp corner and then immediately into a number 4, which is terrible. I never should have done that, but I did it. And, that's where I'm at. So let's see if I can run it forward through here. Okay, I'm forward through 1. Let's come up into number 2. Forward through 2. Still going. Okay, so it'll do a number 4, or 2 number 4s as it were. And yep, there it is. It's getting ready to do a 3rd. So, okay, passed the number 4 test. And let's conclude this thing. Okay, in the last segment, I know I said we were going to wrap this thing up, but I forgot to do a pull test. So what can this thing pull? I am going up a 2% grade. I have 6 cars in tow. They should all be about the same weight, even though one's a little bit longer. And I don't think it's going to make it with 6 cars because I don't have a locomotive that does. And ScaleTrains, without traction tires on them, they're just like the Atlas. They get sluggish. They don't pull uphill very well. I don't know if it's a weight thing with the sound or what, but you can see she's struggling there with that 6 car. And it's still moving, but and I'm at about 30% throttle, and so she's stuck. If I take off that 6 car, yep, there she goes. So 5 cars is what you get. It's about the length of a local. All of my locals run doubles anyway. And the track work here isn't great. There's some divots that they add a little more drag to it, so it's kind of unfair. But assume at a 2% grade, and I know it hit a bump up there because I found it earlier. But so assume at a 2% grade, you're going to get, and so free itself, you're going to get probably 5 to 6 cars, and that's really about average. So nothing spectacular from the pull. It pretty much did what I expected it was going to do. Okay, now we're ready to wrap this baby up, and I'll give you my final score on these models. So, we're going to, for locomotives, we're going to break the review into 2 categories. 1, aesthetics, and 2 is the operation. So, each is going to be scored out of 10, and these models are beautiful. They really are. They look great. They have all the little bits and pieces that you'd want. But man, that copper's just annoying. Like, it's a minor detail, but you're gonna spend all this time, all these beautiful details, all these perfect decals and painting and added pieces, and then I got this big ugly copper thing back there, and I know I can fix it if I really truly wanted to with a little bit of black paint, but I shouldn't have to. And it doesn't show on any of the other locomotives, so I just, I'm gonna hit you with a 0.5 point deduct on that. So 9.5 on the look of the model, just because that's, I feel like you quit on us here. You just got to the end and then you went, just I don't know, but everything else, I mean, all the little added pieces and parts and fan details, and they're great little models. They look fantastic. Really happy with the look overall. And I'll be honest with you, I mean, am I being a little harsh on that 0.5 point deduction? Oh, maybe. I don't know, but that's where we're gonna call it a 0.5 point. Okay. Let's talk about the operation. Out of the box, yeah, they were a little jerky. They didn't run real well, but through the break-in period, they started smoothing out, and I think they're going to continue to smooth out. Before you go in there and make any modifications to CVs or lubricate it again, or don't do any of that stuff yet. Break the model in first and see what it is. So after about 4 or 5 hours of running, continuous, if it's still having issues, then it might have some issues, gonna hit you for a 0.5 point there. I may take that 0.5 point back because technically the models do run nicely. There's every now and then there's a little bit of hesitancy, and like I said, as I'm running it, it's improving. So it's factory new, needs to stretch out a little bit. So I don't think I have an issue with the model. I may come back and revise that if it doesn't even out, but right now, 0.5 point deduct for that. I'm going to deduct another 0.5 point on the fuel tank. Although I know it is probably prototypically located. it would have been nice to have just a little tiny bit of give under the fuel tank. Yes, all of the defects it's finding are my defects in the Trackwork. It's not a defect with the model; it is my Trackwork. But it is now making me go around filing down a bunch of joints, which I probably should do anyway. But it's a little annoying that I have to do it. Once again, it'd have been nice to be maybe just a smidgen out of prototype and have just a millimeter of give there, or 16th of an inch, just some small fraction, to allow for imperfections. But once again, I think that's a nitpicky detail because your track work shouldn't suck. So okay, I recognize my track work sucks in some places. I'm gonna fix it. The locomotive's gonna run fine afterwards, and it runs fine now. It's been doing laps, no issues. But yeah, okay, so half point there. So I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10 on the operation because it's a little, couple of little annoying things, but not overall not a bad operator. So if you want to tally all that up, average it out, you're coming up to about a 9.25 rating out of 10. Not bad from my standpoint, although I will probably never purchase another set of BLI SD40-2s. I will be purchasing more ScaleTrains. I spent a lot of money this month on locomotives between the big boy and these, so it's going to be a while. I don't know when I'm going to find them next. Maybe it'll be at the train show in Altoona, but coming up here in the summer. But these I like these. I would add these again. A couple of issues that people are noticing, but they're not really issues with the locomotive other than that possibly that motor break-in. I will give you guys an update on these things at the end of my February layout update. I'll let you know if they smoothed out. I'll let you know how many rail joints I had to repair, and then if I need to adjust my score either up or down, I will. But right now, 9.25, which I know is a funky number. You're probably laughing. Out of 10. They're nice locomotives. The two that I have, they run decent. They look great. They sound good. And in general, I'm happy with them. I'm much happier than some other folks seem to be. And I'm happy that the issues that they're having and the problems that they're having are not my problems. So that's it. If you have any comments, questions, leave it down below, and I will address them. But that is my review of the ScaleTrains SD40-2. I tried to be as open and show you everything that I can as possible to keep it as real as possible, because I know you guys are going to be spending your hard-earned dollars on these things, so I don't want to mislead you. I'm simply giving you what I see as the operation of the model right out of the gate. So, all right, folks, that's it for us today. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.